You keep asking yourself, why do people always get me wrong? Why do I feel invisible even when I'm speaking from my heart? But what if I told you they were meant to misunderstand you? What if Allah allowed it? Not to break you, but to hide the masterpiece He's still creating in you. You weren't rejected because you're unworthy, you were veiled, because He's still writing a version of you this world isn't ready for yet. And tonight, I'm going to tell you why that silence, that confusion, that ache in your chest wasn't abandonment. It was a sign that Allah is rewriting your soul in private. And when you finally understand what He's doing, you'll stop needing to explain yourself to anyone ever again. 1. He covered your truth because it's not ready for public eyes. They didn't understand you, not because you didn't try, not because you didn't open your heart, your mouth, or your truth, but because Allah never intended for them to understand the full picture just yet. The version of you they judged was never the final version. It was the middle of your story, the in-between chapter, still healing, still reshaping, still learning how to breathe again. And Allah, in His mercy, said, "Not yet." Not everyone gets to witness a sacred transformation in progress. Not everyone is meant to see the raw, unfiltered you, because some people will look at you while you're still cracked and call you broken. Some will see you while you're still rearranging your soul and label you confused. And if He allowed their validation too early, you might have settled for being half-healed just to be accepted. That's not what He wanted for you. So He hid you. He made you feel invisible. He let them overlook you, walk past you, misunderstand you. Not because you had no worth, but because your true worth is still in the making. Imagine a seed buried in the ground. It doesn't look like much. It's covered in dirt. It's unseen, untouched, unnoticed by the world. But something powerful is happening beneath that soil. Roots are forming. The structure is being built in silence. And if anyone tried to dig it up too early to understand it, they'd destroy it. That's you right now. Allah buried you in a season of solitude. He covered you in silence, not because you were forgotten, but because you were being protected from opinions that could have crushed what's still delicate inside you. He saw that you're not ready to be exposed to the world just yet, because you're still learning how to live from your soul instead of your ego, still learning how to speak your truth without apologizing for it, still learning how to trust His plan even when everyone else misunderstands it. So He kept your beauty hidden. He dimmed your light in public so it could grow stronger in private. He closed doors you were desperate to open because behind those doors were people who would have praised the mask but never honored the soul. And when you begged Him, "Ya Allah, why can't they see who I am?" He gently whispered back, "Because I'm not done showing you yet. You're not lost. You're not behind. You're not too late. You're simply in the phase of being sacredly hidden, wrapped in divine protection, until what He's forming inside you is strong enough to stand tall in the light. And when that day comes, you won't need to explain yourself to anyone. They'll see the quiet power in your presence, the peace in your eyes, the strength in your silence, and they'll wonder how you bloomed so beautifully, not realizing that while they were dismissing you, Allah was planting you. So stop trying to explain what He's still unfolding. Let them misunderstand. Let them walk away, because your story isn't over. It's just beginning. 2. He separated you from the noise so you'd hear only Him. There were days you wondered, why am I always the one left out? Why don't I fit in like everyone else? Why do I feel distant, even in a room full of people? You used to belong, or at least you tried to. You laughed when you didn't feel like laughing. You agreed when your heart was screaming no. You tolerated what drained you, just to avoid being alone. You stayed in places where your soul quietly suffocated. because you feared silence more than exhaustion. But what you didn't realize is, Allah loved you too much to let you keep performing. So He started removing the noise. The people you always ran to began to pull away. The conversations that once distracted you started to feel empty. The attention that used to feed your ego suddenly felt meaningless. And slowly, without warning, you were alone. At first it felt like abandonment, like punishment, but it wasn't. It was redirection, because Allah knew if He didn't separate you, you'd never slow down enough to hear Him. You'd keep chasing the wrong voices. You'd keep following the crowd even when your heart was quietly breaking. So He stepped in. He started whispering in your silence. But at first the silence felt heavy, unbearable. You thought something was wrong with you, when really something was right for the first time in a long time. Because in the quiet, you began to notice things, your breath, your wounds, your heartbeats. And beneath all the pain and confusion, you started to feel something holy. His nearness. He separated you from the noise, not to isolate you, but to reintroduce you to Him. Because somewhere along the way you got so used to being around people, you forgot how to sit with your Lord. You forgot the sweetness of a long sujood, the peace of whispering your secrets to the one who already knows them. The healing that comes from not having to perform, explain, or defend. He missed you, and this was His way of bringing you home. Sometimes He'll allow the entire world to go quiet, just so you'll finally turn inward and realize you were never alone. You were being invited to return, to realign, to rebuild from a place that doesn't collapse every time people change. A place that doesn't rise or fall based on approval. Because once you truly hear Allah in the silence, you'll stop needing validation from voices that only know the surface of you. And that's where real strength begins. So the next time you feel like everyone's gone quiet, like the calls have stopped, like the invitations disappeared, like nobody checks in anymore, don't panic, pause. Because that silence may not be loneliness. It might be your soul finally hearing what it's been aching for all along, Allah. And once you hear Him again, you won't go back to the noise, because nothing else feels like home after that. 3. He used the misjudgment to kill your need for approval. You used to shape yourself around what others liked. You adjusted your tone, softened your truth. You silenced parts of yourself just to keep the peace. And the saddest part is, you did it all thinking it would finally make them accept you. But no matter how kind you were, they still called you fake. No matter how honest you were, they still questioned your heart. No matter how much you gave, it was never enough. And somewhere along the way, you started asking yourself, is it me? Am I the problem? You doubted your worth. You started to believe that maybe if you explained just a little more, sacrificed just a little more, softened just a little more, they'd finally see you. But they didn't. Because Allah never wanted their approval to be your oxygen. He let them misjudge you on purpose. So you'd finally get tired of performing. So you'd finally get tired of proving yourself to hearts that were never meant to hold you. Because here's the truth. You were never created to be understood by everyone. You weren't sent here to be accepted by every room, every circle, every opinion. You were sent here to walk a path, even if no one else walks it with you. To stay sincere, even if no one claps for you. To be real, even if they prefer a more comfortable version of you. And so Allah started removing your audience. He let your reputation get misunderstood. He let them talk. He let them turn cold, not to break your heart, but to break your addiction to their approval. Because as long as you needed their yes, you'd keep betraying your soul to get it. You'd keep watering yourself down. You'd keep playing small. You'd keep apologizing for emotions that were actually sacred. And you'd keep carrying the heavy, painful lie that your worth is something to be earned through performance. But the moment they misunderstood you, and the world didn't correct the story, and no one came running to fix your name, you started to face something uncomfortable. You started to see, what if the only one I need to be right with is Allah? What if the opinions of others are temporary, but Allah's view of me is eternal? What if their rejection was a release? What if their silence was mercy? What if this misjudgment was never an attack, but an invitation to stop living in fear of not being enough? Because the truth is, you are enough. Not because people say so, but because Allah already decided so. And the moment you believe that, really believe that, you'll feel a peace that doesn't shake when people leave. You'll feel a love that doesn't vanish when they don't respond. You'll feel strength that isn't tied to being chosen. Because you'll finally realize you were already chosen by Him. So let the world misjudge you. Let them speak. Let them misunderstand. Because you no longer need to be understood by people who aren't part of your purpose. You only need to be faithful to the one who sees everything, even when no one else does. And when that truth lives in your heart, you'll stop seeking their applause and start walking with quiet confidence in the eyes of the one who never needed you to perform to begin with. 4. Their coldness was the fire that purified you. There was a time when you thought you had found your people. You gave them warmth, loyalty, patience, pieces of yourself you never gave anyone else. You showed up when they didn't even ask. You kept forgiving, even when they stopped explaining. You held on longer than you should have, because in your heart, you never meant to be temporary in anyone's life. But slowly, the temperature changed. Their replies got shorter. Their tone got colder. You weren't invited like before. You weren't included in what used to feel like home. At first, you blamed yourself. You thought, maybe I did something wrong. You replayed conversations in your mind, trying to find the moment they turned distant. But no matter how hard you tried to fix it, they kept pulling away, and the coldness began to eat at you. It made your chest feel heavy. It made your prayers feel desperate. It made you wonder if maybe, just maybe, you're not worth the warmth you keep giving others. But here's the truth nobody tells you. Their coldness wasn't meant to destroy you. It was sent to purify you. Allah saw the parts of you that were too attached, too loyal to people who only loved you when it was convenient, too forgiving of patterns that were slowly bleeding your soul dry. And because He loved you more than they ever could, He lit a fire, not to burn you, but to burn away the illusion. To show you who's real and who was only present when you made life easy for them. The coldness you felt from them was the exact heat Allah used to pull you back to Him. Because pain has a way of waking up what comfort made numb. And sometimes it's only when people go cold on you that you remember how warm His mercy has always been. You see, you were starting to lose yourself in people, in their opinions, in their moods. You let their love become your mirror. And the moment they changed, your reflection cracked. But Allah wanted better for you. He didn't want your heart to depend on unreliable hands. He didn't want your peace to be based on someone's attention, so He let it fall apart. He let the warmth fade, so you'd stop depending on fires that were never meant to keep you alive. And as painful as it was, you began to rise. At first, you cried in silence. You begged for clarity. You searched for closure in people who only gave you confusion. But slowly, you stopped reaching out. You stopped explaining. You stopped watering dead plants, and you started sitting in the fire dash. Not as a victim, but as someone being remade. Because that's what fire does. It purifies. It removes what doesn't belong. It refines what's worth keeping, and it prepares gold for greater things. That coldness you hated was actually the moment your soul became too pure for people who only loved the old, weaker version of you. So don't be ashamed of what you had to walk through. Don't carry bitterness. Don't shrink into silence or harden your heart, because that fire didn't kill you. It woke you up. And now you love from a place of truth. You give with boundaries. You speak with courage. And your heart, it belongs to Allah first, which means no one can freeze it ever again. 5. He protected your heart by ending conversations. You couldn't end yourself. You held on. Even when it hurt, you held on. You kept hoping they'd change, kept waiting for them to finally understand what your silence meant, what your love was saying, what your soul was quietly needing. But they didn't. You saw red flags, but you forgave them. You felt the coldness, but you blamed yourself. You noticed how one-sided it had become, but you just kept giving. Because your heart wasn't built for temporary. It was built to stay, and because of that, you stayed in conversations that drained you. You explained yourself over and over to people who never really listened. You apologized for things that were never your fault. You tried to make peace in places that were slowly killing your peace. You didn't want to walk away. You weren't built to give up on people. So instead, you suffered in silence. You made excuses for their distance. You prayed for clarity, but still refused to let go. And that's when Allah stepped in, because He saw what you were hiding. He saw the tears you wiped away so no one would worry. He saw the nights you stared at your phone, waiting for a message that never came. He saw how loyal you were to someone who wasn't loyal to your soul. So He did what you couldn't do. He ended it. He broke the connection. He closed the door. He allowed the conversation to die. Not to hurt you, but to rescue you. Because if He left it up to you, you would have kept reopening the wound. You would have kept waiting for maybe. You would have kept tolerating emotional starvation, thinking it was patience. But that wasn't patience. That was self-abandonment. And Allah couldn't watch you keep pouring your heart into a place that was leaking. So He protected your heart, not by giving you closure through words, but by giving you silence that could not be argued with. Yes, it hurt. Yes, it felt like rejection. Yes, you questioned. Why like this, Ya Allah? But one day you'll look back and realize that unanswered message saved you. That silence was louder than any explanation. That sudden ending was not cruelty. It was divine compassion. Because Allah knew if He didn't end it, you'd never receive what's meant for you. You'd still be stuck trying to fix a bond that was never built to survive your growth. You'd still be begging to be heard in places where your soul was never truly seen. And you deserve more than that. You deserve peace without performance. You deserve love that doesn't make you question your worth. You deserve conversations that don't leave you more confused than comforted. But most of all, you deserve a heart that feels safe. And Allah knew that as long as you were still explaining yourself in that space, your heart would never feel safe again. So He removed you, or He removed them, or He made the distance so wide that even your loyalty couldn't bridge it. And it's okay to miss them. It's okay to grieve what could have been. But never forget, what ended wasn't your punishment. It was your protection. And the moment you surrender to that truth, the healing begins. Because Allah never takes something from your hands, unless He's preparing to place something better in your heart. 6. The misunderstanding wasn't a curse. It was a mirror. You thought it was unfair, that people kept misreading you, that no matter how clear your heart was, they twisted your silence. They misunderstood your intentions. They questioned your sincerity. And it left you confused, hurt, and tired. Tired of being seen through broken lenses. Tired of always defending what you never meant to harm. You wanted them to understand. You wanted them to see the real you, the soft you, the loyal you, the one who never meant to cause pain. But no matter how much you tried to explain, it felt like talking into a storm. Your truth got lost, and you started wondering, why does this keep happening to me? Why does no one ever see me right? But what if the misunderstanding wasn't a punishment? What if it wasn't even about them? What if it was a mirror, a divine reflection, showing you something you were finally ready to face? Because here's the quiet truth. You spent a long time shaping yourself for others, becoming what they needed, becoming what wouldn't upset them, becoming what kept the peace, even if it meant breaking yourself in the process. And that worked for a while, but eventually the mask cracked. The weight became too much, and Allah, in His mercy, allowed someone to misunderstand you, not to hurt you, but to show you how much of yourself you've been hiding, bending, and betraying just to keep being liked. He used their rejection to hold up a mirror, so you could ask yourself honestly, why do I feel so small in their presence? Why do I let their opinions shake my peace? Why do I still need their approval to feel like I matter? The pain of being misunderstood was never about what they thought. It was about what you forgot. You forgot your truth was sacred, even if no one clapped for it. You forgot your softness was a gift, not something to explain or edit. You forgot that you don't need to be digestible to be deserving. And you forgot that peace doesn't come from being seen correctly by others. It comes from being seen clearly by Allah. Sometimes it takes being misjudged by the world to realize you've been misjudging yourself for years. You've been too harsh, too apologetic, too willing to carry guilt that doesn't even belong to you. So Allah let it happen. The looks, the whispers, the quiet exits, not to curse you, but to wake you, to say, it's time to stop molding yourself around misunderstandings and start remembering who I created you to be. Because now you're not confused. You're getting clear. Clear on your limits. Clear on what you'll no longer tolerate. Clear on what real love sounds like and what it doesn't. And as painful as this season has been, you're starting to rise. Not by changing for them, but by returning to yourself. You don't need everyone to get you. You don't need everyone to agree with you, because your soul wasn't designed for the crowd. It was designed for truth, and sometimes truth feels lonely. But it never leaves you empty. This was never a curse. It was a mirror. And now that you've seen yourself clearly again, you'll never shrink to fit someone else's misunderstanding ever again. 7. He hid your wisdom, because the wrong people would have weaponized it. You've always been different. You see things others ignore. You feel things others bury. You ask questions that make people uncomfortable, and deep down, you always knew. You weren't made for small talk. You weren't made to float on the surface of life. You were born with depth in your soul, and it scared people, not because you were wrong, but because you saw too much. You could read energy in silence. You could feel dishonesty in someone's tone. You could sense when someone was lying to themselves, even before they admitted it. And because of that, you were never fully welcomed, never fully embraced, never fully understood. But what if I told you? Allah made it that way on purpose. He gave you wisdom. He gave you emotional intelligence. He gave you sensitivity to things most people don't even notice. But He also gave you a wall, a veil, a divine protection. Because He knew if the wrong people accessed your soul too early, they would use your wisdom against you. They wouldn't honor it. They'd manipulate it. They'd pretend to admire your insight, while quietly using your words to control you. They'd study your softness, just to figure out how to weaponize it. So Allah hid you. He made sure your wisdom didn't land in certain conversations. He made sure your insights went over their heads. He let them dismiss you as too much, so they wouldn't steal what they weren't mature enough to handle. It hurt, didn't it, to feel like no one really heard you? To feel like your voice echoed in rooms that only cared for noise, not truth. But what you didn't see is that Allah was preserving you. Because you're not ordinary. You're a vessel for something sacred, And sacred things are never shared without intention. Sometimes you wondered, why do I hold back when I want to speak? Why do I feel this wall even when I want to connect? It wasn't fear, it wasn't weakness, it was divine protection. Because you've been given eyes that see through masks, and a heart that can hold pain without turning bitter, and a mind that understands things long before they're explained. That kind of soul isn't meant for everyone. It's meant for purpose, for timing, for those who will treasure it, not twist it. So Allah hid your wisdom, not to punish you, but to prevent your light from being distorted by those still living in darkness. And now maybe you're starting to realize, not everyone who says you're wise deserves access to your mind. Not everyone who's curious deserves your truth. Not everyone who compliments your insight deserves to walk beside you. You were never meant to explain your soul to people who haven't even begun to face their own. You were meant to guard your knowing like a sacred flame, to speak only when it's safe, to open only when Allah gives you the sign, to share only when it heals, not when it costs you your peace. And one day, you'll meet the souls who were made to hear you, who will sit with your depth without trying to drown it, who will say, I don't just hear you, I see you. And when that happens, you'll know, this is why Allah hid me for so long. Not because I was too much, but because I was always meant for more. 8. You're not misunderstood. You're being spiritually rewritten. You keep saying you're misunderstood, that no one gets you, that you feel like an outsider everywhere. Even among people who once knew your name, your laughter, your story. You scroll through conversations you no longer feel part of. You watch people who used to feel like home become strangers, and you wonder, what happened to me? Why do I feel like I don't belong anywhere anymore? But let me tell you something that may change how you see everything. You're not misunderstood. You're being spiritually rewritten. This isn't confusion. This is transformation. You are not falling apart. You are being rebuilt from a deeper blueprint, one that wasn't drawn by society, culture, or people, but by Allah. You see, your old self was crafted in survival. It was shaped by what you had to be to stay loved. It was built on learned behaviors, false beliefs, inherited wounds. But now something has shifted. Your soul can no longer pretend. The mask is too heavy. The roles are too fake. And the version of you that once fit into their world no longer fits into your own spirit. And so Allah began to erase, not to destroy you, but to uncover the real you that was buried underneath it all. That's why your relationships feel strange. That's why your passions are changing. That's why the things that once gave you joy now feel distant. It's not depression. It's not confusion. It's awakening, because you're not who you used to be. And you're not yet who you're becoming. You're in the middle, in the sacred middle, where Allah is removing everything that no longer aligns with your soul, so He can write something that finally does. And yes, this phase is lonely, painfully lonely. People leave. Plans collapse. Your own voice starts to sound unfamiliar. But don't rush to fix it. Don't panic and try to go back to your old self just to feel safe again. Because that version of you, the one they understood, was the one that kept shrinking to be digestible. That self was tolerated, not celebrated. That self was surviving, not living. Allah doesn't want you to shrink anymore. So He's rewriting your soul with truth, with strength, with divine clarity. And yes, that comes with spiritual growing pains. The misunderstandings, they were necessary. So you'd stop trying to be understood and start trying to be real. The isolation, it was sacred space. So He could speak to you without the background noise. The confusion, it was a sign that the old patterns were no longer sustainable for the soul you're now becoming. You were never too sensitive, never too emotional, never too intense. You were simply designed for something deeper. And now, You're returning to that design. So don't grieve the old version of you too long. She served you. He got you here. But now you're being led into something greater. You're not misunderstood. You're not behind. You're not broken. You are becoming. And when this spiritual rewrite is complete, you'll speak differently. You'll love differently. You'll walk into rooms without needing to be understood, because you'll be carrying something so real inside you that even silence will feel holy. And when they ask, "What happened to you?" you'll smile softly and say, dash, 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 Allah rewrote me. So if you're watching this in the dark, wondering why no one gets you, why your voice feels like it disappears in every room, please remember, you're not meant to be explained right now. You're meant to be rebuilt without interruption. Allah isn't late. He's just being careful with something that precious. Your truth isn't lost. It's becoming, and one day, they'll see exactly what he was unfolding. And they'll understand why he let you walk alone for a while.